rocked by a new wave of police repression after Morales' exit creates a power vacuum. Protests against neoliberalism in Chile enter their fourth week. And Haitians answer the opposition's call for mass protests. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I am Doris Polo. A day after the coup that forced President Evo Morale to resign, Bolivia is in a state of limbo with a complete absence of government. While the police have launched a new wave of repression in popular neighborhoods, citizens came out to resist the coup in El Alto and other communities around La Paz. There are reports of one person being killed and others injured. Meanwhile, the Vice President of Senate, Janine Áñez, who was an opposition supporter, has arrived in La Paz under military escort to try to call an extraordinary session of the National Assembly. It is the Assembly which needs to formally accept the president's resignation and nominate a new president, but the session was suspended. A number of supporters of Evo Morales, including mayors and members of the Electoral Court, have been detained. After his resignation on Sunday afternoon, Evo Morales has rejected the fierce police repression. On Twitter, he wrote, "After the first day of the civic political police coup, the police repressed with bullets intended to cause death and injuries in El Alto. My solidarity with those innocent victims, including a girl, and the heroic people of El Alto who are defenders of democracy." A video published on Twitter by a Telesur collaborator shows how right-wing groups have been making shields and weapons inside a garage. They are allegedly paramilitaries trained to pose as civilians during the coup. Henry Mamani, a representative of the Trade Union Confederation of Intercultural Communities, told the media that his organization would not accept the resignation of Evo Morales.
We, the intercultural family, will never go down on our knees. We will always stand and resist. So we call on our colleagues to stand up and mobilize permanently. We, as the Intercultural Confederation and family, won't accept the resignation of our brother president. For it is today or never, to live or to die, in defense of the Bolivian people and the democracy of the Bolivian people. The Bolivian people will not allow this coup and the far-right groups to get their way. We thank Bolivian citizens in El Alto for their support and mobilization. Also, our colleagues from the other organizations, and that's why we call on our colleagues for a national mobilization today. We aren't afraid of you, Mr. Camacho. You came here to carry out a coup d'etat, to discriminate against us, to divide us, to humiliate us. And we, the people, are here to say that you will never be our president, Mr. Camacho. The people will never accept you or someone like Carlos Mesa, who in that Black October himself killed people in El Alto.
Our correspondent, Freddy Morales, has the latest from La Paz.
Journalists in El Alto, just outside La Paz, are telling us that many roadblocks have been set up there by residents who support President Evo Morales and reject the political situation which forced him to announce his resignation on Sunday. Here in La Paz, there is less and less activity, fewer people in the streets, less traffic. Some banks opened earlier but then shut their doors. The same is true of the shops, including small neighborhood stores. This is because there is a total vacuum of power in Bolivia. There is no president or vice president. There is no national authority at all, but nor are there local authorities. Government offices are closed, schools have suspended classes, as have the public and private universities. This is because of the complete lack of security in the cities of La Paz and El Alto. The police, who had been in revolt for 3 days, after the resignation of their commander this morning, announced they would return to the streets, especially in the popular neighborhoods, to combat what they call antisocial elements. They've returned to El Alto, where people are attempting to resist and oppose the resignation of President Morales. In the interior of the country, there haven't been reports of major incidents, except in Chapare, where the Cocoa Growers Association has announced resistance to what they call the coup d'etat and the resignation of the president and vice president.
Now, the political crisis in Bolivia is as a result of escalating violence led by right-wing groups that had been working to overthrow the government. Let's take a closer look at the events that led to Sunday's coup.
Fires set inside electoral courts and other attacks against public institutions were the first phase of the coup in Bolivia, a situation that began after opposition groups decided to reject the results of October's general elections. Opposition violence in the streets did not cease. Destruction, road blockades, and armed protesters multiplied in different cities of the country. Despite growing violence, opposition leaders continued to call for mobilizations, not willing to wait for the results of an audit of the vote count. At the same time, aggressions against government supporters and the leaders of the movement towards Socialism Party were on the rise. They were being subjected to kidnappings, torture, and public humiliation.
I am in the side of the truth. I am not afraid to tell the truth. I am in a free country and I will not stay quiet. If they want to kill me, go ahead, kill me. As I said one day, I will give my life for this process of change.
In line with these destabilizing plans, different media outlets were taken over by opposition groups, trying to prevent them from doing their work. The attacks became more and more personal and reached the homes of ministers and people close to the government. As a result of this terrorism and of threats against their lives and their families, senior government officials were forced to submit the resignations.
Governors, mayors, and some senators resigned to save their families. What are they being told? If you quit or speak against Evo, we will respect your family. Now I have resigned. We have resigned. I don't want to see families abused under the instruction of Mesa and Camacho.
The resignation of President Evo Morale marks the last phase of a coup which had as a main tool extreme violence.
Mexico's Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard has said his government will provide asylum to Bolivia's deposed President Evo Morales if necessary. Ebrard said in line with Mexico's tradition of asylum and non-intervention, the country's embassy in La Paz stands ready to receive Morales and other officials facing persecution. He also revealed that so far, at least 20 Bolivian government officials have sought asylum.
The position that Mexico has adopted today is to vindicate the respect for constitutional order and democracy in Bolivia. That's the position Mexico has taken. Of course, we also ascribe to the right to asylum, which Mexico has always supported and called for in various historic international situations. We're going to call for an urgent meeting of the Organization of American States, because their response to the gravity of what happened yesterday with the military coup and police action was silent. One of the founding principles of the organization was the defense of freedom and democracy.
Protests in condemnation of the US-backed coup in Bolivia and in defense of deposed President Evo Morales continue in major cities around the world. In Washington, demonstrators have already started gathering outside the OAS headquarters, which sits across the street from the White House. The OAS, which monitored Bolivia's elections, had called for the results to be annulled while questioning the validity of Morales' victory. Those taking part in the solidarity action led by advocacy groups Code Pink, the Party for Socialism and Liberation and Answer Coalition are condemning the OAS as a dangerous institutional arm of the US neoliberal foreign policy machine. Protesters are therefore calling on the international body to retract what they say are its misleading claims about the duly elected Bolivian leader. And protesters have poured onto the streets in Argentina, declaring their support for the Bolivian people who are struggling to defend the significant gains won under Morales' leadership. Mobilizations are taking place in Buenos Aires as protesters decry the institutional breakdown in Bolivia. Social movements and advocacy groups have rejected what they say is a crime against Bolivia's sovereignty. Argentina's president-elect Alberto Fernandez has also decried the situation in Bolivia as a coup. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, world leaders also react to the situation in Bolivia. Join us again after this. Welcome back. A number of world leaders have condemned the coup against President Evo Morales. The president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, has called on the international community to protect democracy in Bolivia and the life of Evo Morales.
I call on the entire decent, patriotic, humanistic, democratic community of the world, governments, social leaders. I call on the Sao Paulo Forum so that we raise the flag in defense of democracy in Bolivia, that we do not accept this coup, and that we will protect the life of our brother Evo Morales, who is in danger.
Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel said the right wing, via a violent and cowardly coup, is attacking democracy in Bolivia. We express solidarity with our brother, President Evo Morales. The world must mobilize to defend his life and his freedom. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said that on Monday his government will have an official response to the coup in Bolivia. But for the time being, he commended President Morales for choosing to resign over exposing his people to violence. Meanwhile, the former president of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, also condemned the coup, saying that it is unfortunate that Latin America has an economic elite that does not know how to live with democracy and with the social inclusion of the poorest. And the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador, which played a critical role in the recent anti-neoliberalism protests in the country, has condemned the coup. They tweeted, "Our solidarity with the Bolivian people. We reject the coup orchestrated by the right wing, the oligarchy and economic interests against the government of Evo Morales. We demand that human rights be respected in accordance with international law." And also the leader of the UK's Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, he threw his support behind the president of Bolivia. Corbyn said, "To see Evo Morales, who, along with a powerful movement, has brought so much social progress, forced from office by the military, is appalling. I condemn this coup against the Bolivian people and stand with them for democracy, social justice, and independence." In other Latin American news, protests against neoliberalism in Chile enter their fourth week. Chileans are marching in the capital Santiago against rampant inequality in the country. They're calling for the president to resign and a constituent assembly to replace the current constitution, which was written during the era of right-wing dictator Augusto Pinochet. The demonstrators also condemned the repression of anti-government protests, which has seen 23 people killed, according to official figures, and hundreds hospitalized. A general strike with the support of the country's major unions has been called for Tuesday, November 12th. The Chilean government has agreed to write a new constitution to replace the existing one, dating back to the Augusto Pinochet military dictatorship. However, the government wants the Congress to lead the process of rewriting the constitution and not a constitutional assembly. It's a move that will likely upset protesters who have demanded direct involvement from the people in drawing up a new charter. They say it's either constitutional assembly or nothing. Meanwhile, the Interior Ministry has not yet given a timeline for the process, but said the government would move quickly to start.
If they had that mentality and it's going to be beneficial for all the citizens, great. But if they are going to modify some part, it is not going to serve us at all. They have to change the whole constitution.
It's a first step, yes, but since they are just opening up steps, it's like saying that in Chile the ministers, they talk and don't do anything.
In some Caribbean news, protests are continuing in Haiti as the opposition called for mass demonstrations across the country on Sunday. The unrest started in July 2018 as Haitians demanded the resignation of President Jovenel Moïse, whom they accuse of leading a corrupt regime. The Caribbean nation also suffers from high inflation and fuel shortages. The police have violently repressed demonstrators using tear gas and rubber bullets. Some retaliated by throwing stones and setting vehicles, debris and other objects on fire. At least 20 people have been killed and 200 injured in 5 weeks of protests. Jamaica's former Chief Justice, Sir Edward Zaka, has died at the age of 88. Prime Minister Andrew Holness tweeted that he was deeply saddened by the news and offered condolences to his family and friends. He recalled that Sir Edward was the first Jamaican to be appointed to the UK Privy Council and was knighted in 2015. Sir Edward served in the Courts of Appeal in Bermuda, Turks and Caicos Islands and the Cayman Islands. He was sworn in as Chief Justice in 1985 and served as President of the Court of Appeal of the Bahamas from March 2000 to July 2001. Trinidad and Tobago marked Remembrance Day on Sunday with the observance of the annual Memorial Day parade put on by the nation's protective services. Dignitaries and members of the public looked on as hundreds of law enforcement officials performed their drills. The President and Prime Minister participated in the wreath-laying ceremony at the National Memorial Park in the capital city to honor all who served and those who fell in World Wars I and II. Barbados also observed Memorial Day with a similar march by the country's troops. The Governor-General and Prime Minister partook in the wreath-laying ceremony at Hero Square in Bridgetown. Onlookers listened to the sermon and hymns, which sought to immortalize those who fought in World Wars I and II and either lived to tell the tale or died. Coming up, we give an update following Spain's general elections. Don't touch that remote. Welcome back. In Spain, the Socialist Party of Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez won the highest number of seats, but fell short of an absolute majority at the repeat general election on Sunday. With the far-right Vox Party doubling its seats in the parliament, a long-standing government deadlock appears no closer to an end.
At the moment, the right-wing opposition is, through the results they have achieved, the Popular Party and the Vox. It is they who can block us and the rest of the parties, apart from the independentists who are a separate issue. We hope they contribute to breaking the deadlock.
In Catalonia, pro-sovereignty parties won just under 50% of the region's seats in the Spanish Congress. Of the 48 available, the Left Republic Party won 13, Together for Catalonia 8, and the left-wing Popular Unity candidacy, running for the first time in Spanish elections, won 2. Despite the celebrations, the Republic Left's lead candidate, Gabriel Rufián, warned of the rise of the far right in Spain.
One Ciudadanos. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Long live the land. Long live the Republic. Long live freedom. Long live the democracy. And long live free Catalonia. But there is bad news. Bad news for any Democrat. The result of fascism. From pure fascism. The result of Vox. And today here's a party, we humbly say it, the anti-fascist champion. You will have us in front. Vox will have us in front.
Activists in Catalonia's Girona province are blocking a major road between France and Spain in protest against the continued repression of the Spanish state. Our correspondent in Barcelona, Joan Ortiz, has the details.
We're following the protest called by activist platform Democratic Tsunami very closely. The current protest is a blockade of the AP7 highway near La Jonquera, which is the last Catalan town before the French border. The zone is collapsing. There are kilometre-long traffic jams in which cars can't go any further north nor return. The situation is similar on the other side of the border. A stage has been set up in the middle of the highway, so it's being presumed that's for live music and other political acts. But that's yet to be confirmed by Democratic Tsunami. We've also seen that many protesters have built barricades to defend themselves from police forces. It also seems that the region was very well prepared, having been provided with consumables and groceries hours before the roadblock. We've also seen how social media has contributed with a number of solutions to get to the blocked zone and reach the stage in order to join the protests. Tsunami Democratic has called for people to join the mobilizations and to be prepared to stay demonstrating. Until now, police forces have been able to scatter protests, but how they're going to be able to do this time with all the cars is unclear.
Moving to Africa. The Republic of Gambia has filed a lawsuit against the government of Myanmar, accusing it of committing genocide against the Rohingya Muslim minority. Justice Minister Abu Bakar Tambadou filed the case at the United Nations International Court of Justice in the Netherlands on Monday. Gambia is suing on behalf of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. The lawsuit seeks to hold Myanmar accountable for the atrocities committed against the Rohingya. It also wants the court to take immediate measures to end the genocide.
Well, we have filed the case this morning, and what we are seeking to do by this filing is to get Myanmar to account for its actions against its own people, the Rohingya, to ensure that the International Court of Justice does justice to the case and to the cause of the Rohingya. And the Gambia, which is bringing this case on behalf of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, wants to send a clear message to Myanmar and to the rest of the international community that the world must not stand by and do nothing in the face of terrible atrocities that are occurring around us. It is a shame for our generation that we do nothing while genocide is unfolding right before our own eyes. And so we are sending a message that it doesn't take a country with economic or military power to speak out and speak up against injustice anywhere around the world. That's the message I have.
The winning Tunisian Islamist Ennahda party has nominated its leader to head the country's next parliament. The party was put forward Rachid Ghannouchi to be Tunisia's next Speaker of the House and also nominated him to be the country's new Prime Minister. The party won 52 out of 217 seats in October's parliamentary election, but failed to reach the number of seats needed to form a government. Ghannouchi has led the party since its formation almost 40 years ago.
The decision of the Shura Council is to preserve Ennahda's right to build and preside over the government in accordance with the results of the elections and the text of the Constitution, and to ensure the stability of the country and the success of the democratic transition.
And we end in Palestine, where thousands have commemorated the 15th anniversary of the death of former president and liberation icon Yasser Arafat. In his speech to mark the occasion, President Mahmoud Abbas called on all Palestinians to honor Arafat and all the martyrs by remaining resilient in the face of increasing Israeli aggression. Arafat, who led the Palestinian Liberation Organization for more than 3 decades, died on November 11, 2004, after falling ill a month earlier at his compound in Ramallah, where he had been confined for more than 2 years by the Israeli siege.
Israel says that the martyrs are criminals, terrorists and murderers. Israel has lost, and we will never accept to renounce our martyrs. They are the most sacred.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you so much for watching.